Oh, the weather outside is frightful, but the fire is so delightful. And since we've no place to go, let it snow, let it snow, let it snow.
I know that we were supposed to say the customer's always right, but there was nothing right about that singing.
Do you live, eat, and sleep the hotel industry? Looking to brush up on your game? You've come to the right place. Welcome to No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast with your host, Glenn Hausman.
Hey everybody, welcome back to No Vacancy with me, Glenn Hausman. I know, I'm excited you're all listening today, and I'm excited to be here today. We are now deep into the holiday season. In fact, as we are releasing this, it's Christmas on Monday, and for me, that's a really exciting day, maybe my favorite day of the year, because I'm going to go and have some Peking duck at a Chinese restaurant near me after probably going to see a movie. But you know, that's Jewish Christmas. That's what I have to do. Again, thank you all so much for being here with me today. This is such an exciting show for me because why? I have Roger Dow of U.S. Travel coming up after the commercial break, and that's going to be awesome because we're going to really get to the bottom of why U.S. tourism is down. Is it the Trump slump? Is it the exchange rates? Is it a slowdown in business? We're going to find out a little bit later. But first, I want to introduce my guest here, Suraj Patel. Suraj, it is great to meet you.
So great to meet you in person too.
Okay,
big fan.
So Raj Patel is really cool because I'm sitting here in his apartment in downtown Manhattan, and he is a person from the hotel business who just happens to be running for Congress next November. So welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you for making the trip out here and coming to my apartment, my bedroom. Actually,
right.
It's a really funny setting to do an interview, but I've been all over the place today, so it's the easiest place to do it.
Well, I will tell you something. It's very special that I actually leave Long Island, not on an airplane, actually take Long Island Railroad in. It's either the only reasons why I come into New York for really great interviews and to go and see fish shows at Madison Square Garden. So,
oh, nice.
So feel, you're very special there. But I do want to say before we get started, this show is brought to you in part by Duetto. I don't know if you know Duetto, the revenue management company, but they do a great job. If you want to learn all about Duetto, check GetRevenueResults.com. You hear all sorts of great stories from how they are helping hotels maximize their income, not by giving away occupancy, by doing it the smart way, smart, intuitive ways of revenue management. That's GetRevenueResults.com. Whew, the ads today are really tough for me, Suraj.
That's okay. It's okay.
That's because I'm flying blind. I actually do not have any notes with me because when I came on the train today, I didn't bring my laptop, just my iPad, so I could, play Candy Crush, all the important things on there, and listen to some podcasts. And I didn't bring my actual notes. But I should say, Suraj, if you're around in Orange County on March 8th, 2018, I suggest you go to CLIC, the California Lodging Investment Conference. You can check that out at CLIconference.com. Tell them No Vacancy sent you. You'll get a discount. You're going to hear all about them at the commercial break. But for today, I really want to focus on Suraj Patel over here. Suraj, what I think is really cool is, to me, and you really symbolize one of those great American success stories, right? Your parents came over here. They started their lives in the United States, and you were raised within the hospitality business, and now you're looking to get into politics. So I love telling these stories. Tell me a little bit about your family, where they came from, how they came to the United States, how they wound up in the hotel business.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, thanks for having me.
Sure.
This story is really special and one that I think a lot of your listeners and a lot of people from our community hear or know and have lived through often. And I'm a product of the American dream. I'm a product of my family moving to the United States. With my great uncles, started in the 60s, and then my parents and stuff in the 70s, and sort of right into the lodging business. At first, they were working security guards, convenience stores, all those things that that a lot of first generation immigrants do. And then followed by, I think their first business was leasing like an 18-room motel in southern New Jersey.
So they couldn't buy it outright; they had to lease it.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, so where it really becomes crystallized or clear is, I was born in Mississippi. The reason I was born in Mississippi is they were running a motel for somebody else, and they bought a burnt down seafood restaurant in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, in southern Mississippi. and as a family business, and
So how does that
yeah. Well,
that work?
So you can tell how great a business people they are, because they were like, well, look, there's a burnt down seafood restaurant. What do we convert?
Perfect.
Yeah. What do we convert this thing to? It's an opportunity here, to be able to buy this thing.
So they went ahead and they converted it to a burnt down hamburger place.
It was a Tex-Mex restaurant called Cuco's. It's a franchise, our first franchise that we were franchisee of. And that at least tells you their business acumen. They didn't think that Hattiesburg, Mississippi in 1983 was ready for an Indian restaurant. So that's good.
Yeah.
Probably still isn't. But anyway, and so so I was born in Mississippi while they were operating and running this restaurant. And we grew up in the hospitality industry. My brothers and I grew up in the hospitality industry from day one, whether that was in that restaurant, or when we bought our first Days Inn, off the highway, in Beech Grove, Indiana, which is where I moved when I was 5. We headed up there, and this typical story. We lived in the motel. We did the rooms. We helped, clean up the parking lot. My brother and I were given assignments like go sweep the parking lot, like this massive 120 room Days Inn parking lot.
Wow.
Exterior corridor, 2-story L-shaped building. And it's just like, as kids, we would just like walk around with the broom and dustbin and be like, okay, that was sufficient enough time. Come back. No one's going to be able to tell where the cigarette butts are way out in this thing, but there's an obsession with Indian hotel owners. Everything from filling vending machines, and working on construction sites in the summer, working at that restaurant, dicing tomatoes and all those kinds of things. Those were our story. That was our childhood.
Yeah.
Lived a childhood sort of living within, I think a lot of Indian folks, a lot of immigrants, in the United States come here, whether they're from India or whatever, and end up choosing to buy for their whole families essentially a job.
Right.
So instead of, 4 people working out in service and places like that, pooling together all your resources together to buy a motel, buy a dry cleanership, buy whatever, and working all those shifts and bringing all that in, that's how all of these people got started.
I know, and it's such a fascinating story to me because, my family's history is a little bit different, coming over from Eastern Europe, getting out before, Nazi Germany took over and all of those kind of things. But we didn't do that same kind of thing. I wonder if it's a cultural kind of a difference with the way the Jews did things as opposed to Indian families and other immigrant populations.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is all anecdotal or my observations over the years, and I study a lot of this, and I know I'm going to get to it, and I mentioned to you that I teach at NYU Business School. And so I put a lot of thought into these kinds of like sort of systemic and structural things and why things end up as they are, because that's where I'm interested, right, in this sort of macro level thing.
Yeah.
But some of this is, why do so many Indian and other immigrant families do franchises? Well, there's an obvious answer to that to me. It's, if you're new to this country and you're probably not very ready to understand the tastes, preferences of consumers, you're not fantastic at language and things like that, but you're great at hustling, you're great at operations, you're great at cash flow management. Those are universal things. If you're good at them, you're just good at them. And hospitality, at least for us, it runs in our blood. In India, like the part of India we come from,
Gujarat.
Yeah, Gujarat. A lot of Patels, obviously, we know are in hospitality because it's a way of life for us. It's imbued in our life. I actually think, one time I was at a Marriott conference and Arnie Sorensen spoke, and it's still something that stuck with me because I've been in hospitality my whole life. After we grew up building that business, and even the last 5 years, I've been the president of my company, family company, Sun Development and Management. Yeah. Arnie Sorensen once said that, there's something really special about being in hospitality. Because when somebody is at the end of their lives, they can remember maybe 5 or 10 things off the top of their heads. Right. And that's the weddings, the bar mitzvahs, the funerals, the birthdays. You're there.
For me, it will be the first time I saw Star Wars.
There you go. First time you saw Star Wars. And some of those things, it's interesting because you're doing those with your loved ones and your family and one other party at all times. Hospitality industry. There's always, you're there as a hotelier, picking people up or advancing their lives, picking people up when they need to be and being part of it. And it's a hell of a privilege to be in that place. It's a hell of a privilege to be a part of people's lives when they need you the most. And a lot of my view of how I think the government should operate is sort of informed by that. It's informed by the idea that, like, you should be there creating those opportunities and creating the space and giving people a ladder up and being there for them when they're falling down to pick them up so that they can take the risks, so that they can take the opportunities that do in fact make this country great. That we get out of the way once we put people on the pathway on those ladders of opportunity, but that we have an obligation to be there for them. We have an obligation to catch them when they fall because that's what we're asking them to do. And sometimes bad luck and things happen.
Well, it sounds a lot like the obligation that your parents had to you and your brother.
That's exactly right. That's right. It's the way that a family is run, right? And if nothing else is more important in our culture and in my upbringing than family, I'm completely a product of it. I'm imbued by it. This congressional run is only possible because of it. And it's a hell of a luxury. It's a privilege. And it makes me feel an obligation to try and do my best to recreate that for as many people as possible. When someone asks you, when this, in this moment, in this country, in this moment, when so many people feel like we're so far off or heading in such an insanely wrong direction, and people can't even agree on basic truths.
That's right.
On facts. Mm-hmm. The system is premised on the idea that we have a certain amount of objective truth that we all agree on, and at least we can debate how we should address it, whether the climate is changing. That's a fact.
Right.
It shouldn't be in dispute. If one group of folks makes that in dispute, even though it's an objective fact, we'll never be able to solve it. The system's premised on at least coming to consensus on facts.
Right.
And same with inequality right now. It's not enough to talk about inequality and say, oh my God, we're going to take from this group and give to this group. It's also not enough to say that inequality is not a big deal. It's a real deal.
Right.
It's a real problem. And there are drivers of it. There are significant drivers of it that once we agree that it's a problem, can begin to address in a systematic way. We're not that far from solving a lot of major problems. We're not a couple clicks away.
But we don't seem as a country to have the will to solve any problems right now. We seem to be caught up in this game of pointing fingers at each other and demonizing each other as opposed to working together.
That's right. And something has to break.
So at what point, you have a business, you develop hotels.
Yeah, so
you have a whole life. So tell me a little bit about that life, where you were at, and then what the decision-making process was to make such a sharp change, because it's not going to make you wealthy working in Congress. Well, maybe it will. I've seen what some of the congressmen.
It turns out a lot of these guys are going to be very wealthy based on the bill they just passed today.
And we are recording this on Tuesday of the week that this is released. And as we're sitting here, the House has already passed tax reform, and we're waiting for it to be sent to the Senate. But please continue. Go back. Let's rewind a little bit.
Rewinding a little bit. Yeah. So we're in Indiana. We're living in the motel. We're working at it. We're fixing rooms and turning this thing into a workable property. Guys started going to kindergarten and first grade there, and we're there our whole lives in Beech Grove, Indiana. When I was 7, we started a construction company, and on an SBA loan, built our first 60-room Comfort Inn. So the model that we
What year was this?
1991.
Mm-hmm.
So the model that we used was to go. It's a lot like what, to some extent, it's kind of like what people do, big developers do now with municipalities trying to extract, concessions for their luxury buildings and this and that, except much, much, much more normal and mainstream. We went to Rochester, Indiana, 7,000 person town. Today you'd call that the heart of Trump country. It was Fulton County, Indiana's county seat. It's off of US 31, about an hour south of South Bend. Flat as the eyes can see, every which direction you look. This is like the flattest, all cornfield land. And that town didn't yet have a Walmart yet. This is one of those transitioning towns, that just had, they had a McDonald's and a bunch of cornfields and a little motel. I want to say it was called the Rosedale Inn or something like that. It was like a 12.
You can say anything. I'm not going to check up on you.
Yeah. I just can't remember what it was called, but I know that our term for it was the Rochdale. I just remember that. And so we'd approach towns like that and say,
hopefully guests were able to not just check in, but also check out.
Exactly. So we'd approach the mayor, the city council, Chamber of Commerce was very instrumental at the time, and say, look, we'll build you a national flagged hotel, a Comfort Inn, which will help, all the people that are at the 3 or 4 manufacturing plants, 3 or 4 Japanese corporations that have like assembly stuff for cars and all that. That right now all their people are going up to South Bend or down to Kokomo, an hour each way, to spend the night because they're not staying at the Rosedale. So, if you're going to attract more industry, if you're going to attract more stuff, you need a Comfort Inn type thing. What we'd like to do is, maybe get a deed restriction on hotels for the next 10 years or something like that in exchange for us building this hotel. And so at SBA Loan, we built our first Comfort Inn. And that model, was something we continued to replicate.
Right.
Same invested money, family money only, reinvested all the profits and stuff. A year later, we built a Holiday Inn Express in a town called Rushville, Indiana, in the same way. And then a year later, a Holiday Inn Express in a town called Brownsburg, Indiana, in the same way. And then Kokomo and Washington, North Vernon, and on and on and on. So that by the time I had graduated high school, we had built, as a family company, 16 hotels in Mississippi and the Midwest.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, and it's a hell of a story because it's one that when we talk a lot about business right now and the differences between business and small business and big business and stuff like that, something that's really near and dear to me is cash flow generating real businesses. People are working, whether that's the deli at that corner over there, the dry cleaner there, whatever. There's something real to me about it. There's something real about the hustle that's a little different from servicing somebody else's transactions to, making them happen themselves, making the magic happen. I think there's something really cool about that. And we grew up in it. So, my brothers and I grew up, on the construction sites, helping doing some accounting, chopping tomatoes at the restaurant, and that kind of thing.
Right. A story I've heard 100 times before in the AHOA community. And speaking of the AHOA community, No Vacancy is the official podcast of the AHOA annual convention this year, and I will be there.
I will be there too.
I will be there telling stories of the American dream from all of the members there. I'm going to have a cool podcasting booth. We're going to be shooting a lot of video. It should be a lot of fun. If you're not going to the AHOA conference, you should, because Suraj and I will be there. We'll be, I don't know if we'll be hanging out.
Come say hi.
Maybe if this podcast works out, we'll hang out some. Who knows? You never know. Or it could be worse. I sounded totally Long Island there. Anyway, so you've got 16 properties at this point, and you've got a real thriving business. So is this before you went away to college? I guess at some point you.
Yes, yeah. So I went off to college. I went to Stanford, and even then, sort of the way that the family business is imbued in us as a culture, I didn't even do internships in the summer and things like that. It was kind of an always automatic thing. You'd come back and help run the business.
Dude.
Yeah, exactly. So I graduated college and I was always involved in politics,
right.
From that get-go. I had this interest.
Like what? Like in your neighborhood or in school?
Yeah, I had this interest, in high school. My high school was a public high school and working class town, so it didn't have massive programs and connections to the town and all that kind of stuff. But I approached the mayor's office of Indianapolis and said, I want to be an intern here.
That's cool.
During high school, and I had the credits to not have to worry about, going through everything. So, I was able to create a program at my high school called School to Work, which allowed me and others to go out and do internships in the community every other day for a semester. Right. I got to experience politics firsthand by making it myself.
That's
not
amazing.
Through contacts or connections or donations, but making it. In college, I was in student government and all that kind of stuff. But I came back to Indiana right after to help run the company. And came back as a vice president for development and put a bunch of shovels in the ground, and we're under construction on 7 hotels at that point in 2006, right before I left for law school. So I came to law school at NYU.
Wow.
In New York City, and I've lived here since.
Yeah.
And during law school, a year in, I was inspired by a certain political candidate from Illinois, so much so that, much to my parents' dismay, I actually decided to freeze law school and join the Obama campaign as an organizer and out in Colorado, knocking on doors and all of that. And, pretty quickly that turned into, becoming a person on the advance team, wow. allowing me to travel around the country 7 days ahead of the president, or at the senator at
right.
the time, 7 days ahead of the senator, helping set up their day as their sort of traveling staff, putting together rallies, building stages, conducting satellite interview time, production, and all that.
Did you have to sweep up the parking lots there too?
No, we really just took off as soon as this thing was over. It'd be out. And we jump ahead. So we're basically living out of a suitcase, visiting 23 states, I think, in this whole thing, setting up events and stuff.
That's pretty wild. So you've always had the political bug, it seems. So at this time of your life, did you know that running for Congress was going to be your destiny, or did that light bulb go off later on?
Oh God, no. Yeah. Watch, if you work in politics and you watch it go, very few people want to then actually be the candidate running.
Right. Yeah.
And honestly, this, so I've had this interest, and I worked then for, as a consultant doing, as an advanced associate, doing trips when I had the time to step out, for the White House for the 8 years that President Obama was in the White House. And in fact, the most, sort of the crowning moment of my political career, up to that point was, I knew that the president was invited to India. For India's 50th Republic Day anniversary. And I requested the White House Travel Office to be on that advance team. Now, the funniest thing, they're like, why? Because, dealing with the Indian government and dealing with the logistics and operations and putting together a delegation like that in India, is people are just like, are you serious? In advance, people say India stands for I'll never do it again. But after they go once, because it's such a stressful thing.
I do need to go there though myself.
But I went because there was something really important to me about being that, look, 40 years after approximately 40 years after my family came to the United States, had 4 boys, had built a massive hotel company, a construction company, and all of that with absolutely nothing to start, all through one generation, and within 40 years had a son go back to India on behalf of the White House of that country and fly back on Air Force One.
Wow.
To the United States is kind of an interesting, remarkably poetic full circle story, and I needed to be part of that.
So that's pretty cool. All right, so your story's pretty cool, but what's it like flying on Air Force One? How freaking awesome is that?
It's pretty dope. It's pretty incredible, and it was funny. It was just a lucky thing. I was supposed to come back on United directly to Newark, and they were like, there was a blizzard, Juno. It was Winter Storm Juno. I remember the day because
I don't remember the storm, but I do think of the movie fondly.
I used the hashtag Thanks Juno because they canceled all these flights into Newark and JFK for 3 days. Going, and I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna be stuck in India. I've been here for 6 weeks. I cannot stay any longer. And they were like, look, we can fly you back to Andrews Air Force Base and then get you on a train. It's gonna be longer, whatever. And I'm like, sure, I'll do it. Yeah. Obviously, I'll do it. Right. And so, it was really fun, really cool. And, it was really important. And then,
did you come home with any presidential seal stuff?
Oh,
like
yeah.
napkins?
I have napkins and I have cards I will show you after we finish this interview in my room. I have some stuff.
I promise they'll still be here after I leave.
Yeah. I have some swag. And then this last election, happened. Mm-hmm. And I think very few of us expected the result that we did. Very few of us expected the result in the manner that it came. And I think a lot of people were affected by it. And I know that as a person who's been involved in politics, this whole year has been a journey to figure out, what can I do?
Right.
And I'm encouraged by one thing about this whole sort of, I consider it like an exorcism, that there's an entire generation of young people waiting to be ready to be activated in politics, energized and wanting to be part of the process because they now know the stakes are so high. And there's even an entire group of disaffected voters who weren't voting. 26% of the country gave us Donald Trump.
Right.
And there's a group of people out there that heretofore haven't been regularly involved. Mm-hmm. We deem them in politics, we deem them low propensity or sporadic voters.
Right.
Voters that only
usually
show
come
up
out once every 4 years.
Instead of the middles and all that. I think there's a recognition that that's no longer okay.
Right. And hey, I know it's no longer okay. And when I was in my 20s, I think I did the same exact thing. But as I've gotten older and as the political climate has changed, I felt I really, we've always told growing up that it's our duty to participate.
Right.
But I never really felt it keenly until the past 10 years or so.
Yeah.
And it's just becoming more and more and more important that each and every one of us get involved. And one of the things that I do when I speak on stage and politics come up is I always tell people to get involved on the local level, get to know their congressperson, and really start to get involved so you can affect change.
Citizenship is an obligation.
Right.
We now know that. And as a person who's in who knows about the process and all of that, what I'm seeing is a remarkable opportunity to serve as a bridge to welcome all these people into the political process and help demystify it, rather than say, "Oh my God, you're at fault. Oh my God, where were you? What is your activist history? What were you doing? Why were you asleep at the wheel?" And I'm noticing this. Politics is the only business on earth that blames its customers for not buying a shitty product.
Right.
It's the only business that's like, oh, the young people don't vote, the minorities don't vote, the immigrants don't register, instead of being like, what are we doing so wrong that is stopping people from doing a completely free activity, which is to show up in November or in June in a primary and register their satisfaction or dissatisfaction with the choices that are in front of them.
Right.
And if you're dissatisfied with your choices in November, then all the more reason to vote in a primary like mine to give yourself better choices in November. But I think this is a lot of people after the election, myself included. I was part of a founding team of a fantastic group called The Arena. And The Arena is an organization that a group of us founded together to get young people, the day after the election, sort of get young people running for office across the country. That the problem is that there's a dearth of authentic, young, progressive voices entering the political arena. And so let's build a community around them and encourage them to run and give them the support, the nuts and bolts, and the tools and the inspiration to do it. And that organization has now, spawned hundreds of candidacies and organizations around politics. And we convene every quarter in a different city. We started in Nashville, and then we did Raleigh, and then Detroit, and just last week Phoenix. And in watching that happen in Arena, I thought to my business brain turned on.
Right.
And I said, we're sitting here focusing, very importantly so, on the supply side of the problem. But no one is encouraging people to change the demand side of the equation. Right?
Interesting.
That in my mind, the good businesses are not ones that produce something and then find an audience. The good businesses are ones that are a response to a demand by an audience. And to me, we all are unsatisfied with our politics. Politics never really discusses the future. It doesn't discuss our obligations with each other or what kind of society we're going to be. And the future has little agency in politics right now in government because no one with a vested interest in the future regularly votes.
Right.
And 0 to 17-year-olds are not allowed to vote, and 18 to 40-year-olds sporadically vote, and marginalized populations sporadically vote, and they're not getting engaged by the campaigns because they don't vote often. But what if they just did? And right now there's so much despondency around politics. You turn on the news and it's bad news on both sides.
Right.
You turn on Twitter and it's just cynicism and anger and recrimination. And you say, oh my God, what am I supposed to do? I'm so despondent. I'm helpless. And I just want to turn it all off.
Well, I got to tell you, I feel a lot like that. I mean, some days I turn on the news and I'll watch all the different news channels to try to get a well-balanced variety approach to what it is and make my own decisions. But some days I eat it up like popcorn because it's juicy, right? But some days I'm so sad and depressed and despondent over the whole thing. I just can't even deal with it, and my natural inclination is just to want to pretend nothing is happening, and I don't need to be engaged, I don't need to be involved. But as we've already laid out, that just doesn't cut it. So you need to get out there and you need to do stuff. So how are you energizing?
We get the politicians we deserve.
Right.
The power is in our hands. If you just simply show up to vote, if you change the electorate. If you show up to vote, I'm asking for 15 minutes of your time in January to wake up in the morning, 15 minutes early, and on your way to work, stop in at the school or the community center or whatever that you're registered in. If you need to register, then go do that and go register beforehand and go register your demands for the supply to follow. Register your demands that people talk about the opportunity gaps in this country. Register your demands that say, hey, what are we going to do about double-digit inflation in college tuition, or that 1 out of every 5 black males is incarcerated or on probation by the time they're 30.
Right.
You know?
So how are we going to make these changes then? You're here, you're running in the 12th district. It's Lower Manhattan. You're on, it should be obvious to everyone listening. That means you're probably running on the Democrat side of the ticket, right? Now, how are you going to energize those younger voters to come up? And then I want to try to get into, how you see things a little bit different than maybe some of the folks listening to the show who own and operate hotels may see things.
Sure thing. I mean, I think we're going to energize people because I think that by building a bridge to participation, by letting people who are already seemingly energized, we just saw Virginia, we saw Alabama, New Jersey, there is an unprecedented wave of civic activism going on across this country. It's almost a renaissance of it. And we always say that, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. This generation, I am.
Your generation.
And me specifically, I am, and we are, the people that are showing up to vote now, we are the reaction to what happened last November, right? Mm-hmm. We are the equal and opposite reaction. Here we come.
Right.
So now let's say, if that's true, if we are going to usher in a bunch of new office holders in 2018 and a Democratic majority or whatever that may be, what is it going to accomplish?
Right.
Right? Like, let's talk about the kind of future we want, not recriminations about the past or how to take the pie in today's present and slice it in different directions.
It just seems that the problem that we have with politics is that we're on one way, and then the pendulum swings all the way back the other way, that there's no common sense that's in the middle.
This is not a tenable way to govern a country.
I'm not in a political party. I've never been a part of a political party, and it's not just because I pretend to be a journalist every once in a while. It's because I have philosophical differences with the extreme left and with the extreme right. I'm very much in the middle kind of guy. I really feel like, hey, we could take care of people, we could do the right thing, but I'd also like to keep some of my money at the same time, right? So how could you bring balance back to the force, Suraj?
Yeah, I mean, Glenn, this is funny. One of my favorite political quotes is actually, incidentally, by Mike Huckabee, of all people, who does make a good point. And when he says, a lot of people, when he used to say, by the way, this is when he was saying.
When he was,
that a lot of people fight politics on this false left-right axis.
Right.
But the politics we should be playing in is the y-axis, the up and down.
Right.
Right? Are we going to be lifting people up? Are we going to be providing and expanding opportunity? Are we going to say how we're going to make people's lives better? Are we going to make the moral fabric of this country better, not worse? Or the other side, are we going to use division? Are we going to use fear and hate and rhetoric like that? Both, by the way, are valid and effective strategies to win elections, because you've seen it happen.
Right.
Because if you run a campaign premised on division and anger and hate, you make it so bad and ugly that people tune out, and whatever, and turnout suppresses, But if you were trying to expand the electorate and say, look, let's leave these old battles in this left-right axis and just talk about those things that do matter to all of us. You asked me about hotel owners, right?
Right.
One of the things that I hear as we go across the country and try to listen to people and in this city as well about their businesses and all of that is one of the things holding people back isn't access to capital as much as or access to opportunities. It's access to human capital. It's access to labor that's a workforce that's attuned to the challenges of the 21st century and the economy that we've created. And incidentally, if you talk to people who are looking for work, it's that they don't fill the jobs that are open. So where should we be spending our money and investing in? It should be in our own people. That shouldn't be a left or right issue or a pro-business or a pro-labor issue. That's a everyone issue.
Right.
Because both need one another. And the same thing when we talk about labor, it's like every person working as a person at our hotels or anywhere else is the smallest business in America. It is a person engaged in the business of selling his or her work on an hourly basis. And so the differences between people working and our small businesses are much smaller than the difference between our small businesses and the people working and large businesses that are able to buy market share and buy defensibility from Congress. Because they can buy a whole set of rules for themselves. Okay. That's where we should draw our line.
Right. So let's break this down a little bit. A lot of folks in the hospitality industry are cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs over this tax thing that's happening right now as we speak. It's fait accompli, right? It's going to pass. I like the idea of helping companies out. They all seem happy about it, but at the same time, it doesn't feel like it's a well-balanced initiative. How do you stand on the tax issue? What do you say to the hoteliers? Because I'm sure you disagree with the fact that this is going through today.
Absolutely. I mean, there are no studies that show that this tax cut, is grounded in any economic realities about paying for itself. So the first thing is first. This idea that the Republican Party is somehow fiscally conservative is one I am never going to grant again without making an argument and saying that's not right. It's not fiscally responsible, that's for sure, to put $1.5 trillion of debt, no matter how many ways you score it, it does not pay for itself, on the next generation. It's almost theft from one generation to the next.
Right.
And my question is, I'm okay if you think the government should be smaller and you should spend less money and give more back to people in their pockets, then you should have the guts to make the cuts necessary to balance that gift to this generation.
Well, they're probably going to make those cuts next winter as a complete separate issue, is my guess, and that's what
I would be. Glenn, you can come back to New York City, or I will come out to Long Island, and I'll buy you a steak dinner.
Oh, wow!
If these guys, if the next year, Paul Ryan in the House or anyone actually makes any significant sort of move towards reducing the spending Sorry, what's worse, by the way, it's one thing to reduce spending on out years, but this is literally having your cake and eating it too.
Yeah, right.
They didn't have the guts to cut the spending for this current. I had a conversation with someone today that I really loved. They said, what is government if it's not a compact for this generation of leaders to the next generation?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, it is.
We're saddling these people.
Totally.
We're saddling these people with a massive debt. We're refusing to pay for some of that here. And even if Paul Ryan and these people do cut entitlements or whatever, or things we paid for, they're going to be cutting it for out years, not for themselves. Right. Which means they want their yachts and these massive tax cuts and the Medicare and Social Security as it was, but not for other people, which is who are they to decide that? I think it's appalling. The other thing I think is appalling about this is, we're thinking about this in terms of the abstract about $1.5 trillion. But what can $1.5 trillion do? I mean, the alternatives here, $1.5 trillion could have paid for this massive investment in infrastructure that
which we haven't
Trump
even
campaigned on,
spoken about,
and still given every American a $600 tax cut today.
Right.
At least that would have benefited the next generation.
Yeah.
The $1.5 trillion could have shored up Social Security till 2070 something.
$1.5 trillion into our infrastructure. Think of all the jobs that would create.
Correct.
As opposed to praising the Disney Fox corporate merger, which now I hear is going to lose up to 10,000 jobs. If we invest our money in the right places, we could all go up and rise the tide. And that's the one thing that I have a hard time understanding in politics is, why does it have to be me and not you? Why can't it just be us? And that's where it seems to fall short.
And I think the story of American politics in the last 30, 40 years is one that's a lot of spending and not enough investment. And to some extent, both parties have been complicit
Agreed.
in this problem.
Again, going back to which is why I'm not in a political party, because they both really frustrate me in a lot of ways. These days, one party in particular seems to be annoying me a lot more than the other, but
yeah, the pendulum has swung back and
forth.
forth. I think, if you were spending the same amount of money to build up the infrastructure for the next generation to use and create and travel and all those things, then you wouldn't be getting as much pushback about raising the deficit. But there's a lot of things $1.5 trillion do. Not to say that what I advocate, because I actually think that the core causes of tuition increases need to be addressed. But even at today's levels, that amount of money could wipe out all student debt and make college debt-free for the next 20-some years.
The biggest problem that we have in the United States of America in politics, to me, is we don't address root causes of problems. We just like to put Band-Aids on issues that aren't really relevant to the core issues. So we all fight and we all dance around, the the outsides of the issues without actually addressing the real problems. If we look at the health crisis that we're having in our country, is because we're not dealing with the actual system. We're looking at how much it's going to cost next year for our families to each have health insurance. We're not looking at the reasons why that's happening. What's happening in the medical system that's sending things out of whack, and then addressing those problems. And I wish politicians in general had enough guts to get to the root causes of problems instead of just campaigning on feel-good things.
Yeah, and or just thinking about things as symptoms and causes. Inequality is a major rising inequality, and inequality is a major problem in the United States. But instead of just railing about inequality as a thing we want to say, let's look at the root causes of it and how do we alleviate it. And instead, first off, this tax bill further entrenches it. We're at the complete opposite direction of what we should have done with this root cause. That's what I keep saying. Like, there's a real problem with truth in politics right now. There is an objective truth. We all have to agree that there are objective truths. This system's premised on us agreeing to those. And yet, it appears we're at this awful point where no one's even interested in acknowledging those and living within two separate or alternative realities. But the root causes of inequality are lack of access to opportunity. And when someone says, for example, you know what, I worked my way through college. Yeah, guess what? No minimum wage job today is going to cover college after it's up to $30,000 a year in tuition. I'm sorry.
That's right. It's
right.
Just,
so
it's
you've
just
got
not
to
possible.
acknowledge that that's not possible, or healthcare.
I'm scared. How am I going to pay for my kids to go to college and get an education that they need to succeed? I'm just not sure. I have not invested in those 529A accounts. I don't have anything. If you want to donate to patreon.com, go to patreon.com, no vacancy, for my kids' college fund. But, seriously though, I mean, when I was in college, I was able to work at the, in my dorm building at the front desk, letting people in and doing the mail. I was able to work at the Gap. I was able to work as an intern for like $3.50 an hour at a radio station, right? And I was able to get by. You can't do that anymore.
And even if you did and somehow made it yourself current, you'd still be graduating into a world where you have the next 12 years of your career, you're digging yourself out of a hole that society is now basically telling you is necessary for you to get that degree.
Right.
It's a real problem. And both of those industries, healthcare and education, it's no wonder that they have the highest rates of inflation in this country for the same sort of outcomes. It's because they're necessity goods. I told you I teach ethics at NYU. I teach business ethics, and there's something about that's a market failure, right? When you have a good that's a necessity, then one party to the transaction knows they can charge any single amount possible for you to buy that good. And so if I tell you, Glenn, that here's a pill that's going to cure the cancer that you have, and it's $20,000, and otherwise you're going to die, you're going to pay me $20,000.
That's right.
And if your net worth is $100,000, I'm going to be like, Glenn, this pill is now $99,999. And you're still going to pay it to me because otherwise you're going to die. Similarly with education, it's like, Glenn, you need to send your kids to college. And you're like, I can't afford it. And I'm like, oh, do you not love your kids enough? Right. Oh, by the way, college this year is $35,000 a year instead of $30,000. Yeah. And every year I can even do that on SAT tutoring. I can do that on private boarding schools and things like that. Every single time I know I gotcha. Yeah. And that's like the worst kind of, worst kind of monopsony in economics.
It's true. And Ben, Jake, my kids, if you're listening, I love you up to $37,500 a year for college. And I think more than that.
Otherwise,
you're not so great.
You're on your own.
All right, we are way over time. I keep looking at the recorder here, and we are way over. I definitely want to have you back, but I do want to give you a chance for some final thoughts. How can people reach out to you? How can people support you? Or in this day and age, maybe hurl Twitter insults at you.
Yeah, I mean, guys, I really appreciate this, and just know that as a person entering politics from the standpoint of a small business owner, a developer, a constructor, a professor, like, I am very cognizant of the challenges faced by people working in business and people working as in our businesses, and yet it's important that at least some modicum of a representation, the House of Representatives, has those experiences in them too, in both parties. And I know that that the hospitality industry kind of weighs, ownership at least, heavily weighs towards one party, towards the Republican Party. But it's pretty important that people in both parties sort of represent you and your challenges so that they at least understand them when those issues come up.
Right. And I would like to say that we can all do it together. If we leave our egos at the door, to get that old cliche out of the way and really just partner, there are solutions that can be satisfying to absolutely everyone. It doesn't have to be an all for one, none for everybody else.
And so just to close, I will say if you want to find me, our website is http surajpatel.nyc. That's surajpatel.nyc. And if you want to email me, you can just email hello@surajpatel.nyc, and I get those.
Excellent. I'm not familiar with the name Patel, though. That's
Exactly.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, I want to thank you so much for being here today. This was really awesome and interesting. I want to have you back maybe next time. We'll get into some more of the actual issues as they pertain to the hospitality industry and why you think your ideas are the winning ones. Sound good to you?
Sounds great to me.
Great. Now I want to thank everybody for listening. Stick around because after this message, we got Roger Dow, President and CEO of U.S. Travel. And we're going to hear all about where we are in terms of attracting people to come to the United States and what's the overall sense of travel. Stick around. Thanks so much for listening.
Thank you.
Have a question for your host, Glenn? Tweet him now at Traveling Glenn. No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast. We'll be right back.
From Eureka to San Diego and Malibu to Bakersfield, the California Lodging Investment Conference, CLIC, is one of a kind, focusing exclusively on our Golden States hotel market. CLIC was launched in 2016 by Craig Sullivan, a seasoned hospitality industry professional, to harness the knowledge of our industry leaders, support our community, and educate emerging talent. CLIC brings together lodging professionals from California and beyond for one day of learning, professional development, and networking. If you are an owner, operator, investor, broker, developer, lender, management company, brand, or professional services provider, you should plan on attending CLIC 2 on March 8, 2018 at the Hilton Irvine, Orange County Airport. We invite you to go check out the California Lodging Investment Conference website at cliconference.com for the latest details and sponsorship opportunities. Early registration now open. And as a listener of the No Vacancy with Glenn Hausman podcast, please make sure to use our exclusive discount code of No Vacancy when registering for this one-of-a-kind in California hospitality event that sold out in its very first year.
Back to the show. It's No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast with your host, Glenn Hausman.
All right, so I'm really excited today. I have somebody super duper awesome on this podcast, and by saying super duper, I'm probably really doing him a horrible disservice. And I'm talking about Roger Dow, the president and CEO of the U.S. Travel Association, one of the most important organizations that we have here in the United States when it comes to getting people to travel and worrying about our wonderful business. Roger, how are you, sir?
Hey, I'm great, Glenn. I wish you would call my wife with that introduction, but thank you very much.
Well, I promise I will email it to her right away, so that way you get some good street cred. But, listen, I love what you do out there. It's great to have someone who's such an unabashed advocate for what we're trying to accomplish here, and that is, of course, making sure that all of us in the travel and hospitality business can have great, successful careers and businesses. So thank you so much for everything that you do.
Thank you.
All right, so let's get right into it. I want to talk about the state of the travel industry with you, and I feel like we're right now in terms of the hotel industry in particular, we're at what I would call the most dangerous part of the hotel industry cycle. When we're at the top of the market, everything is feeling like it's doing good, and I feel like that could make us do some unintentional missteps and give us too much hubris where we won't be able to continue to be successful. How do you see the state of the industry, and am I right at all with what I'm throwing out there?
Well, I think your perspective is right on. Reminds me of an old story of a Chinese general who, centuries ago ran back to see the emperor and said, "I'm just want to report to you how everything is wonderful at the front lines. We're winning all wars. We're in fabulous shape." And the emperor said, go back immediately. We're the most dangerous place in the world. It's bad to be winning and gloating about it. And I think that is probably true for our industry. We are in the best of times, but we could also, through many things that are totally out of the industry's control, perhaps be facing some of the toughest of times.
Right, and that's what I'm concerned about, and that's why I wanted to have you here today, to be able to share what some of these thoughts are. Now, to me, I'm really concerned about what's happening with international travel. I just saw, as we're recording this, some statistics came out saying that travel to the United States was down about 3.9%. I know this is concerning to you. How do you put all of this into perspective?
Well, when you look at international inbound travel, I'm going to take you back a little bit. We had something that we called the lost decade between like 1995 and 2005, where the U.S. lost 37% of its market share. Now, in my career, I headed up, before this job, global sales for Marriott. You think I would know this. I didn't even know it. And we thought we were doing really well in the U.S., and then we started looking at global numbers, and we saw the rest of the world was literally kicking our butt.
Right.
And what happened is they had discovered this darling called travel and tourism as the builder of of their economies, and everybody was promoting, come to their place, come to China, come to Thailand, come to the Caribbean, come to Mexico. And we were silent. And not only that, September 11th complicated it more. And so we got tougher and tougher on legitimate people trying to come here. So we had literally lost our way back then, and we've since climbed back phenomenally.
Yes, we have. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about how we lost our way and then where we're at today. And I think that this is something that's a little confusing for people to really understand, because if you look at how much money the United States has made in tourism over, let's just say, the last 20 years, it looks pretty consistent, but it ignores a very important statistic that the overall global share of travel had exploded during that time, and we stayed the same while everybody else made these incredible gains that you were talking about. So we were going back to what you were saying when you were at Marriott. Maybe you took a lesson from that Chinese general at that point in your career, because everything seemed to be going well when it actually wasn't going well, and I feel like that's what's happening right now.
Yeah, and looking at those times, what had happened, there were probably 3 or 4 reasons behind it. One is we made it very hard to get a visa if you're coming from areas like China, India, Brazil, post-September 11th, trying to do the right thing. But the bottom line, it could take up to 4 months to get your approval to come to the United States. 2, when you looked at visa waiver nations, there were 27 nations where you just needed your passport to come to the U.S., and they hadn't been increased since 1987. And lastly, we weren't promoting ourselves, and the rest of the world was. So those 3 issues caused us to, here's some numbers that were staggering to me. The rest of the world in that 10-year period I spoke about grew by some 40%, or 50 million new annual long-haul travelers, people traveling a long distance. In the same time period, the U.S., which is arguably the best market in the world, has everything to offer, had grown by 1.5%, or less than 500,000 travelers. And that was the problem. So we addressed all those things. We fixed them. We now have visa wait times are down to 4 or 5 days, or 2 days, in fact, in most of those places. We added 11 visa waiver countries. When South Korea, the biggest nation coming to the visa waiver program, it went up some 40% in 1 year. It went from 450,000 South Koreans to 800,000 in 1 year. And we created something called Brand USA to promote America. So we're doing pretty well. So now we went from 2009, 55 million inbound travelers, to last year, 76 million. That's a huge increase. But as you said, now the tide is starting to change, and we can't afford to fall asleep.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about what some of the factors are that are causing this drop in tourism to the United States, or just inbound travel to the United States, because some of it's business as well. And then what some of the solutions are that we could do about it. So I see two major things. Number one is a burgeoning anti-American sentiment around the world, and number 2, currency fluctuations. How much do each of those play into this, and then what other factors am I not seeing readily?
Well, the first one, when you say sentiment around the world, the media, especially the international media, and quite frankly our own media, wants to pile on, and they want to blame everything on Trump, the Trump effect. We've done a lot of research over the years, and this is before even Trump was president, and people around the world who travel are able to separate politics and place. And what I'm saying is, you and I will go to China in a minute to go see the Great Wall and all that. But we're not big proponents of China's human rights policies. We'll go to countries around the world that we don't even know what their politics is, but we want to go there.
Right, and so, I don't even think about it, Roger. It's just a non-factor to me.
It's not part of consider set. So it can be a little bit factor, but the bigger factor is the one you mentioned, is the dollar. The dollar is so strong that the past few years, that if you're coming from Europe, Mexico, Asia to the United States, it's costing you a lot more to stay in a hotel room, to do the shopping that you want to do, to go to restaurants, than it is to go to other places. So those two issues, the dollar is without question a much stronger factor.
Right.
But there's two other factors that I'd like to add. One is weaker economies around the world. So if you look at South America, Latin America, Brazil, Argentina, traditionally huge factors in inbound travel to the U.S., especially if you're in California, Texas, Florida. Well, those economies have had some real trouble. So they've dropped off precipitously. Some of the European economies are a lot weaker, and that's a challenge. So weaker economies. So now we've got three issues. And the fourth one is what no one is talking about, and it's the increase in airline capability around the world. What you've got going on in Europe and Asia is explosion of new aircraft being bought, Ryanair, WOW Air, Turkish Air, the Middle East carriers, and they're all growing phenomenally. So what's happening is, to meet their demands of all this increased capacity, they're offering some spectacular fares to go around Europe, around Asia, et cetera. And we don't even see that in the U.S. So that can be another factor that we're not even thinking about.
Right. That's a very interesting factor, because I'm thinking about me as a consumer, that I might want to go to a particular country, and then I realize, I can get a deal to go to this other country. I'll save that first country I wanted to go to perhaps for another time. Right?
And no question about it. There's no question about it. And the challenge why this is important is inbound travel has been the darling of exports for the past several years. We now do $260 billion of inbound revenue due to inbound travel. It represents the number two export, next to the only thing that's bigger is the manufacturing, like Boeing and planes and things. It's number one service export, but it represents 25% of all exports the U.S. has, period. Everything coming in the U.S., 25% of all growth has come from travel for the past few years. So it's really the darling of the economy. So when it slips, well, you said down 4%, that's commerce numbers, 3.9%. When it slips 3.9%, every point is $2.5 billion to the U.S. economy.
Wow.
Every single point. So if we're down 4 points, that's a $10 billion loss of revenue we didn't have in the U.S. That we could have and should have had.
That is troubling. So this is where it gets a little complicated, because what are you going to do about it? Because it's great on one hand that dollar is strong. It's great that hotels are commanding the best rates that they possibly can. But at the same time, it's turning off that traveler who you say comes here. They stay longer. They spend more money than the typical American traveler. I think the number is $4,300 on average per trip, right? So how do we get those folks to come here, or is it really a lost cause at this point because it's simply too expensive based on a lot of the factors that you've been putting out there?
Well, I think there's several things that can be done. One, I think the administration can definitely play a role. And as you look at what's going on in the news today, the administration is being pulled in 1,000 different directions.
Right.
I didn't even talk to them today until they get tax reform behind them, because that's the only thing. And the administration is obsessed with, and rightfully so, with security. Without security, there is no travel. This industry is the industry that would get hurt most by terrorism, things like this.
I.e. 9/11. Look what it did to us. Right. Go on. Sorry.
Yeah. However, there's a balanced message to be said, and the balanced message should be we are closed to terrorists, and wide open to everyone else, open for business. And the second part is not being said. So I think that's a pivot that the administration could make and should make. The second thing, there's many things, and I understand the administration and their base and all that, but there's a whole lot of things that can be done that you don't have to be blasting press release about, but just making it sure that we have enough people staffing the visa offices, making sure that we have enough people when people come in to get through customs so they're not waiting 2 or 3 hours, making sure that we have all the right policies as far as getting new air travel into the U.S. All those things can be done, and you don't have to scream about them, but tweaks and adjustments could make up for that very easily. The other thing, and I think is very important, is the United States, despite being expensive in some of our major markets, is still a bargain in other markets. I'm talking today I'm in Kentucky. I'm in Louisville, Kentucky.
I was just thinking that in my head about a good market to visit.
Well, last night I had dinner with one of my colleagues in a beautiful, cute little neighborhood restaurant in Frankfort, Kentucky, the state capital, and the bill was $84, and that's not lunch in D.C.
Oh my
So
God.
the bottom line is there's tremendous number of bargains around the U.S., and I think the industry has to do a better job, each of us, each destination, talking about the bargains in their area.
Yeah,
and still there's a lot of value.
I think that's a very interesting idea, because when most people think about coming to the United States, I think we think about those big cities, New York, San Francisco, Miami, right? But we have such amazing sites around the country to see in so many small markets, it can be affordable. But how do we then make sure that, like you were saying, get people to come into this country and do that balancing act that's so delicate to make sure that we are indeed open and welcoming, but at the same time protecting our interests? Because if we don't protect those interests, then we're going to have another major situation that's going to totally stop tourism. And at the same time, if we aren't, if we're too cautious, that'll also hurt tourism. So I mean, you're the genius on this. I don't understand how all of that kind of comes together, besides making sure we have more people staffed to let us in, or maybe that is just the only solution.
Well, I think if you look at security, and fear is a crazy thing. I mean, if you're afraid that something's going to happen, you avoid it like the plague.
Right.
But you really have to have an extraordinarily unlucky day to have something go wrong as a result to an incident. It's a big, big world out there. But if you look at France, Brussels, they're down billions of dollars in travel and tourism. Turkey, there is no tourism. The cruise lines don't go there anymore. Egypt, there is no tourism. These are economies that depend on it. So we have to be smart. I think we could subtly talk about, how important, how seriously the U.S. takes security and our security measures to make sure. And I think you don't want to scream about it because you don't want to send people to do something stupid. But I think it could be a plus of people looking and say, that country is one of the safer countries that you have. I think it's also important that we get out there. More and more of our destinations are opening international offices or have rep firms, and to be talking in the media out there about the value, the bargains, the opportunities that you can get, packaging, things like that. And I still think I used to always kid around with my people. I said, if God got together all the tourism directors of the world, even though we don't even have one in the U.S., Minister of Tourism, and said, I'm going to divide up all the countries again, and you pick a name out of the hat, and you could then pick a country. First name out of the hat, they'd say, what do you want? They'd all say, we want that one called USA, because it's got everything. I mean, you look at a lot of countries around the world, Spain and France, I love to go to, but, you got some good food, and you got some good art, and maybe some good architecture. Nothing like the U.S. U.S. has beaches, shopping, mountains, skiing, cowboys, Indians, you name it. We got it all. And so we've got to get that message out more and more that we're a secure place. We want people to come here. They are welcome, and talk about the areas where there is great value.
Yes, and that I love. And speaking of great value, I believe one of the things that you say out there is that 1 of 8 jobs in the United States is directly or indirectly related to the overall hospitality and travel industry. And it's interesting to me right now because, number one, export, manufacturing that you mentioned. Number 2 is travel. We are turning from a manufacturing economy into a service economy. How does that change the way that you're thinking about the travel industry in terms of overall success for everybody within the industry and then personal success through people and their careers?
Well, I've asked our people, I said, in retrospect, looking at ourselves, I think we talk too much about ourselves. We go, we're the, greatest employer, and we're 1 in 9 jobs and all this. And I think we're talking to ourselves. We've totally shifted the information we're gathering, and we're now talking about travel being the front door to economic development. Mm-hmm. And what we're basically taking, our people have a chart I can send to you, but it basically looks at how much manufacturing revenue is due to travel. All the vans, all the beds, all the things manufactured. How much construction? How much banking? I live in St. Petersburg, Florida, mm-hmm. and the thing looks like a bank opens every week because there's a lot of people moving there.
Right.
How much in education and how many jobs? So we've totally changed what we're talking about and saying, don't worry about how important travel is. Worry about how important travel is to everything else that makes America, move and great. So we've got to be talking that front door to economic development and how critical it is, because no one ever bought a second home. No one ever moved a company to another area of the country. No one ever went to a college or university, and so they first went there on a vacation or a trip or a meeting first and said, wow, I might like to live here. Or, boy, wouldn't it be fun to go to school here? Wouldn't it be great to move my company here? Look at all the great labor force or all the education they have in the area. So I really think we've got to talk much more about how we're the prime mover of this economy.
Yes, I think that's a really great way to approach it. So what are some suggestions that you could provide to my hotel owner and operator folks out there? Because I'm seeing a little bit more. I'm talking about this in the keynote speeches that I deliver on the road. I talk to management company folks, and they're trying to highlight the career paths within their organization, and one of the things I like to say is a lot of the CEOs in the company, in the country, in the hospitality business started out as either washing dishes or schlepping luggage, and now they're CEOs of multi-billion-dollar corporations. So how do we get that message out more to the everyday citizen that wants that career path?
I think right now, when I was growing up, if you want to go into this industry and want to go to college for it, you would go to Cornell, Michigan State, FIU, or University of Las Vegas, Nevada. That was it.
Right.
Now there's a proliferation of tens and tens of programs about hospitality, but most of us in this industry don't go to those programs. I didn't. And the bottom line, because we didn't even know about it, I think one of the first things is it's got to start, and I don't think there's a high school teacher in America that's talking about travel and tourism as a career. They're talking about, do you want to be a lawyer, a doctor, a baker, a fireman?
Well, I'm glad they're talking about lawyers, because we definitely need more of those guys.
For sure. But I think it starts there. I think it starts with, I think hotels could do a great job of, going out to schools and saying, hey, if you'd like to do a little field trip to a business, we'll be glad to give you a tour and show you all the jobs. People don't even realize our industry, no matter what you want to do, if you want to be, gosh help you, a lawyer, or if you want to be in finance, you want to be in development, you want to be in operations, you want to be the greatest chef in the world, you want to be the greatest salesman in the world. This industry is one of the few industries that offers an opportunity in every one of those career tracks. So it's not confining. The other thing is you can work anywhere. I mean, if you're in technology, you sure as heck better be in the Northeast, the Boston, Washington area, down in Austin, Texas, or in the western part of the United States, California to Seattle. Mm-hmm. If you move to Oklahoma, guess what? You're unemployed.
Right.
If you're in the travel and tourism industry, you can move to Oklahoma. You can move to you can move to Shanghai. You can move to Bermuda, and you've got a job. And I think people have to understand it's one of the most flexible careers, and it's a career you can go into. As I did. I was a lifeguard, like you talk about. I started as a lifeguard at a hotel chain that had 6 hotels. It was called Marriott. Can you believe that?
I haven't heard of them.
At the number 6 Marriott.
Wow.
And when I got out of college, I wasn't even, I was outside all the time. I didn't even think about going this business. And the general manager of the hotel came out and said, Roger, why don't you think about going into the hotel business when you get out of school? You did a nice job at our swimming pool here. And I said, doing what? He said, we'd find a job for you. He said, look, I think someday Marriott could have 100 hotels. I said, 100? He said, absolutely right. I said, my gosh, sign me up. Because I figured if you're halfway competent, 100 hotels, and then Marriott has over 6,000 hotels. So
I love it. If they have 100 of one of their brands, it's not even, they don't even think it's a success. That's unbelievable.
It is.
Oh my goodness. It's funny. And what you were saying before about how there's so many different avenues, to be successful in it. That's exactly why I love the hospitality business. So people are like, why did you decide to go into, with your media career, why did you want to be in hospitality? Because it's design, it's finance, it's real estate, it's consumer behavior. It's all of those things that you talked about. So no matter what it is that you love and you're passionate about, you can definitely find a track within it. Even those technology jobs that you're talking about, because you can get them within hotels or hotel brands or management companies as well. So definitely underscore that particular point. So how did you get involved? I understand how you got involved in the hospitality business, but how did you get involved in the lobbying political side of the business from being at Marriott and global sales?
Well, I'm going to take you back a little further, then I'll get there. I get my first job and I go to Houston, Texas, and they put me in housekeeping because I knew how to clean things like the pool and things.
Right.
So I'm in the cafeteria every day and I'm watching these people who come in, not every day, but some days, and they're well dressed and they're very gregarious and outgoing. And I said to my friends, which was the engineering department, the housekeeping department, I said, who are they? And they said, oh, that's the sales department. I said, what do they do? They said, New Year's week and figure nothing. I said, what? They said, all they do is take tours of the hotel and they eat a lot in the restaurants. I said, man, is that a job I want? So I grew my career through sales and marketing and loved it and grew. I started the first frequency program in the hotel industry and all that and loved it. Well, I was in this career, and the fellow who ran this association, we're called the U.S. Travel Association, and we represent the whole of the travel industry, was retiring. And one of my colleagues was the national chair of this association. He said, Roger, this is what you should do. It'd be perfect for you. And I go, I don't know. I kind of love Marriott and whatever. He said, yeah, but he said, you're going to do it forever. And I got looking at it, and it became very interesting. And the hardest thing I ever did was telling Bill Marriott I was leaving. Yeah. Because he was like he is one of the great leaders in our industry, and was like, almost a relative to me as far as I'd known him so long. And he was such a great human being. But I said to Bill, I said, if I were to do this job, it could help our whole industry. I said, wouldn't it be great to have one of your guys, in an area that's trying to help break through lobbying and keep the government from doing stupid things that hurts our industry, and his blessing. And I kind of like it because now I play with everybody. Yeah. Marriott, I don't care if you're Marriott, if you're Hilton, or you're Hyatt, or whatever. You tend to play with your own. I mean, we go to all the meetings, but you stay very close to your colleagues and your business. In this job, I deal with everybody. I mean, I don't care if it's Hilton, Hyatt, Intercontinental, Best Western, Choice, but I also deal with all the, the car rental companies, the Disneys and all that. So it's kind of fun. So I got in this job, and I was intimidated because about lobbying. Oh my gosh! And Roll Call magazine, which is a magazine,
it's the one distributed on Capitol Hill.
Yeah, they came and interviewed me, and they said, "What's it like to be a lobbyist?" And I said, I never thought about it. Number one, I'm not a lobbyist. You have to be more than 25% of your job all day. But I said, it's what I've always done. I said, I've always been a salesperson. And I said, all I do is I go down and I meet with a congressman and I say, Congressman, let me talk about this industry and why it's important to your district and why what we're doing. And I've got a proposition for you that is awfully good for your constituents. And will you hear me out? And that's all I do is, I'm basically presenting what this industry does and how it can benefit various members in our government and their constituents.
It's so fascinating to me, especially when it comes to forming those relationships with folks on Capitol Hill. Now, I know you won't say it, but you are super plugged in and probably have all of those folks in your cell phone that you're talking on right now to me. And you could probably call them anytime, except today because they're talking about tax reform and stuff like that as we're recording this interview. But how do we, as normal citizens or business owners, break through, get the attention of our folks in Congress, and really form real relationships with them? Because it could be a little bit off-putting and intimidating for folks to think that, hey, you know what, they're just people too.
And that's the biggest realization, Glenn, that people have to make is, number one, their congressmen or their local officials would much rather hear from them than me. They don't care about me. I mean, I can tell them a good story, but I'm the guy in Washington. I mean, but it's the local persons, and we've started doing some things that are, we call them travel talks, and we did 40 last year. We'll probably do 50 or 60 this year. And what we do is we go into a district or into an environment, into a town or city, and we invite the local congressman to come in. There might be one or two of them, or state senator or whatever. Mm-hmm. And we usually host it at a hotel because a hotel is a great lab for them. And they'll come in, we'll have a couple of local hoteliers, we'll have a couple of local restaurateurs, we'll have someone from the convention bureau, maybe someone from a tour group or that does kayaking or outfitting in the table, and we get talking about the impact of this industry and how many jobs in their district. And then we take them for a tour. I'm telling you, I watched their jaws drop when they walk through the back of a hotel and they see how many nationalities work in the hotel. They see the cross-section from the richest people in their situation to some of the people who are just getting going, and they realize, my gosh, this is an employment machine. You take. I spoke recently, a couple of years ago with Rahm Emanuel, the mayor of Chicago, and I said to him, Rahm, Boeing said they're moving their corporate headquarters, to Chicago, and I said it was front page news in the Chicago Tribune, and I said the bottom line, I said, they took 6 floors of office buildings and they moved like 100 people to Chicago, maybe.
Right.
I said the same year you had 8 hotels open in Chicago, and those 8 hotels employed over 2,000 people. And it's the eye opener for these people when they walk through a hotel. Because usually when you're in the front of the hotel, a congressman will walk into the hotel to go to an event, and he'll see the banquet staff maybe, or see someone at the front desk when they're traveling, but they have no realization of what the machinery behind the scenes does and how many people are involved. And so these things of travel talks, you're just going to see your local congressman. And I wouldn't, and the first time I went to see a congressman or a senator, or even the president of the United States, you're a little intimidated. You're going to meet with the president, then you realize they're people just like you. You tell the story. I mean, Barack Obama, you can say what they want about his administration, positive or negative, but the bottom line for travel and tourism, he got it. And he didn't get it at first. I mean, Obama came out.
I remember. Don't go spending your money in Las Vegas. Right?
Yeah. But we got, he said you can't go to Las Vegas for the Super Bowl and the taxpayers dying.
Yeah.
And it wasn't aimed at the industry, but boy, it hurt the industry.
Yeah.
And once we met with him, with CEOs, he got it.
Yeah.
And they became very, very positive. And I think Donald Trump's in the same position, and he knows this industry better than anybody. But as I said, they've been so distracted, but the opportunity, I think, for this administration is to have people see America. I could picture Donald Trump saying, "I've traveled around this country and I've seen the great parts of America. I encourage Americans, get out and see each other, travel America." And John F. Kennedy did it 60-some years ago.
Right.
And it's such an opportunity because we're built. The hotels are built. The parks are there. You don't have to build a new factory, and we're so labor intensive. It would create thousands and hundreds of thousands of jobs.
Right. Now, talking about the current administration, it's always hard to try to remove political passion out of it. But we have the hotelier in chief, let's call him. Why is he not spending more time focused on helping our industry in general? Because he knows it's helped make him a wealthy man, reportedly. So why not spread that love that you're talking about?
I think there's a couple of reasons. I think one is, I believe, and I've met him once, but not met him in this job. I don't believe it's intentional. I believe that there's so much going on. You're worrying about Kim Jong-un, you're worried about taxes, health. There's so much going on, and you're put on the TV every day, and they attack you. There's so much going on. We've got to raise it up on his radar screen, number one. Number two, there might be among his aides, and Donald Trump wouldn't, but among his aides, there might be the perception, gee, if he does something positive for travel and tourism, they'll come after him in a big way, saying he's just trying to help himself. If I were Trump, I would say, hey, look, this is what's good for America. I own a few hotels. Hey, guess what? I own less than 1,000th of 1% of the industry. So it's not about me. It's about America. And I think he could weave right through that. But there might be some reticence on his folks of saying, hey, don't talk too loudly about this industry. It might come back to bite you.
Right. Well, I would say Eric Danziger, CEO of Trump Hotels, you probably have his ear. Maybe you could say something out there if you're listening, because we all have to be in this together. We all have to help each other. Roger, before we wrap up today, what are you up to these days at U.S. Travel that's new and interesting that we might not be readily aware of?
Well, we're working right now on infrastructure and with airlines. We've got a couple of things going on. One, our infrastructure. We've gone, Glenn, from having the top 20 airports in the world 25, 30 years ago to not having one that's rated in the top in the world. We've got to fix our airports. So we're working on that. Second thing, it sounds silly, but let me get this straight. I want American, United, and Delta to be phenomenally successful, phenomenally profitable, and grow like crazy. But I don't want that to happen at the expense of the travel industry. And there's a bit of a fight going on right now that most people don't know about. But our American carriers are trying to keep the Middle East and international China carriers and people out of the U.S. You know, they basically want the pie for themselves.
Right, of course.
And I'm basically saying, like the lodging industry, let's grow the pie. Let's not worry about getting a bigger slice. Let's grow the pie. And it's not about, you know, and they're fighting like Norwegian Air, which is a low-cost carrier. I'm saying, hey, the more Norwegian Air brings, the better, because they're bringing a traveler that may not be able to afford to come here. And guess what? When they improve their careers, they're going to want to buy tickets on American and Delta and United. So we have a little pushback going on between our good friends in the airlines of saying, let's get more aggressive about growing the business versus just growing our individual companies.
Right.
So that's one.
I think that's great. Let me say, Mr. Ed Bastian over at Delta, please stop cutting back my frequent flyer benefits. I'll travel more. I'll spend more money with you. So please do that.
And I understand they've been through some very tough times. I do understand they're back and they're profitable. I mean, they're really well-run organizations, and Bastian does a great job, as does Parker at American, and as does Munoz in the United. We got great airlines, but the pie is much bigger and can grow bigger, and we've got to hopefully get focused on that.
Yes. All right. And then the other issue you wanted to mention?
No, and just getting more people to travel.
Yep.
The big thing is to try and people are going after promotional budgets for cities and states. In other words, Florida was a big example where legislators don't understand our business. They're saying, why do we have to promote come to Florida? Don't people come there anyway? And they're looking for money, so they're trying to pull it out of the hide of the promotional budgets, and that's the very thing that feeds the local economy in states and cities. So that's the big battle we got going on. And let's not be stupid. Let's not cut out promoting an area and lose jobs and lose revenue just to capture a few extra dollars for the state budget.
Which takes us back to the beginning of our conversation. The United States never had a meaningful advertising campaign ever. We don't have somebody in the cabinet representing tourism. Until we started to actually advertise overseas, we just had that attitude of people are coming here anyway. And we lost out big time for that factor and the other ones that you mentioned earlier. Is that correct to say?
We definitely did. When we got Brand USA authorized, which is a fabulous organization that's bringing phenomenal value, and the great thing Brand USA is doing, it leveled the playing field. If you're in California or Florida or Las Vegas, you got New York City, you got tons of money to promote.
Yeah.
But Brand USA has leveled the playing field. They can now begin talking about South Dakota, Oklahoma, Nebraska, and places to travel the U.S. But the bottom line, when I went and spoke with Congress people about the importance of this, because we didn't market America, they'd say we don't have to. Everyone knows about America from our our movies, from our music, from our clothing and all that. And I say to them, I say, Congressman, how long have you been a congressman? And they say, 28 years and darn proud of it. I said, oh, so you don't have to campaign anymore. They said, you kidding me? They want my seat so bad. They bring millions of dollars from outside the state. Toughest campaign I ever had was last one. And I said, I thought everyone knew you. All right. And, so we're trying to bring it home to put it in their perspective. But no, it's a huge problem.
Wow, really clever. All right, I feel like I could speak to you forever, but we're definitely out of time, and I want to let you go. Any final thoughts that you might have? Any shameless plugs that you might want to make?
No, it's just this is a phenomenal industry, and everybody should embrace it. And if I've got folks looking for a career, I'd say look at this business. You can go as far as your talent will let you. It's a great industry.
Excellent. And I would urge every single one of you out there, spread the word on the hospitality business. Make sure that you give people a chance for career success. Show them that path. Don't just let them think that it's going to be a job at the front desk and that's all they could go. It's a career. Number 2, make sure that you get out there and you talk to your local politicians. Get them to understand the importance of the hospitality business to our overall economy. And number 3, just get out there and travel, experience new things, and share your experiences with the rest of the world. Travel is great. Travel breaks down barriers. Travel is what is going to bring us all together, in my opinion, in mankind. I want to thank you so much for being here, Roger. I really appreciate it.
Always a pleasure.
Great. I want to thank everybody for listening today. Be sure you drop us a line at Traveling Glenn on both Instagram and on Twitter. Also, check out NoVacancyNews.com. You're home for all of these great interviews. And thanks for listening to the podcast. And I will be back next week. That is, unless I decide to give it all up and start working up on Capitol Hill and following Roger Dow around. So thank you so much for listening. Back next week.
Thanks so much for listening to No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast with your host, Glenn Hausman, online at rouse.media, on Twitter at Traveling Glenn, and on Facebook.com/Glenn.Hausman. We'll catch you next time.